Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone had a good Valentine yesterday. So decided to come on. There's a lot of stuff to get out. Every day there's more and more and more. Wow, fine eagle. You're the first one. You're not going out hunting yet? Did you get anything last night? I forgot what state you were from, Fine Eagle. Oh, you're from Florida, huh? Oh, wow. Dolphin fan. Well, it looks like the Lions got their. We got your the head coach. I hope they can get the quarterback come here. Miami's one of my favorite teams. Arizona, and then the Lions. So on the documentary videos, are those okay to play? Because want to play one of Epstein documentary. I never played before, so hopefully that will be okay to play. Yesterday I had a video. I think they're giving me a warning on my screen. If we continue, they'll take the video down and stuff, and so they give me a heads up on it when I can't play it. So that the whole format changed since Trump won the case. Okay, I got a lot of interesting stuff today. We got Are you going? The race is at 1 o'clock. Daytona today, the first race. Me and Kay rooting for Danny Hamlin last year. He fell short, all because of that caution flag there at the last lap. He could have won. Chico, you go lay down now. You had enough. You had breakfast. You go lay down. Oh, stop it. You're fine. You're fine. You want up here? Come on. You don't need no more food. So the one photo I shared Friday, Trump says, stock up on popcorn for the weekend. What for? Philippines been off all weekend. Oh, okay. I guess that JLR guy is at the scene live right now on Guthrie's mom. Terry. Hope you had a good day yesterday for Valentine.
I didn't know this until I married my ninth.
What? No. Chico, you can't have that. No, now go to on your own, okay? Go lay down. Yeah, I know. Well, I told my sister when she dropped off something for me last night, and she actually agreed on me this time about the distraction. But I think she's on the Epstein list, I think. Come on. Come on, help me do the show. Come on. Come on. Come. Come. Will you get up here so people can say hi to you? Come on. Wrestle up here. Come on. Get up here. You don't need nothing right now. Come on. Up. All right. Chico's ready to go to work. There. You gonna say hi to everybody? Huh? Okay, it's about the 10-minute mark. We'll go ahead and get started. We're going to do 2 shows today. Hey, all right, satisfaction. Hope you had a good Valentine. And yeah, I pop up whenever I can. I just love doing this job for almost 6 years. Almost 6 years. I think it's 6 years since 2020. Well, Papa Joe. So baseball will be starting up soon. Hey, what are you doing? You want to say hi or not? What? You lazy? You lazy? Okay, so let's get going here. See what the adventure of today will bring in this upcoming week here. We're in the middle of February. Okay. There's another clip from that hearing on Bondi. I don't know if we played this one. This is the one that's really good. Yep, yep. Just in time.
Yeah. Okay. Are you up next?
6 minutes.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by acknowledging the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific abuse who are in the room with us today. I want to thank all of you for your bravery in speaking out. I want to say that you and the other survivors of
Look
these
what we
heinous
got
crimes
here.
deserve better from this Department of Justice. In particular, it is shocking that the department did not redact the names of Epstein's victims, but it did redact the names of their abusers. I don't know whether this was done out of incompetence or whether it was deliberate and malicious, but either way, it is completely unacceptable. Even more troubling, the DOJ has failed to bring any of these perpetrators to justice. Instead, it has engaged in a relentless pursuit of Donald Trump's perceived enemies. I want to focus on just one example. The Attorney General of my home state of New York, James. This DOJ has been hell-bent on securing an indictment against Ms. James for something, anything, simply because she held Donald Trump's companies accountable for years of financial fraud. And indeed, the department manufactured an investigation against her for alleged, quote, mortgage fraud. But the U.S. attorney leading the investigation, Eric Siebert, a Trump appointee, refused to bring charges against Ms. James because there was simply no evidence. Unfortunately, a prosecutor who refuses to do Trump's bidding has no place in this DOJ, so Mr. Siebert was forced out. Trump could not contain his fury that he expressed to you in a social media post addressed to you by name. I'm sure you've seen it. Quote, I fired him and there is a great case he wrote to you about, Mr. Siebert. Then we moved down. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. And obviously, you followed that order. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former defense lawyer who had never prosecuted a case in her life, was installed to replace Mr. Siebert, and it was clear that part of her mandate was to go after Ms. James. Halligan immediately sought an indictment, which a court dismissed because Halligan was illegally put into the role. But your department was undeterred. And not once, but twice, it tried to indict Attorney General James in separate courts. Both grand juries rejected you and refused to indict her. It is practically unheard of for a grand jury to refuse an indictment. In 2016, it happened in just 6 cases out of over 150,000 offenses. And you had it happen twice in the same week in 2 different courts. That must have been humiliating. And now there are reports you are continuing to investigate her. The amount of resources that have gone into targeting Attorney General James, months of investigations, multiple failed indictments, is astounding. Since your own prosecutors told you that there is not enough evidence to support a conviction, it's clear that you were going after her simply because she held President Trump accountable and he wants to punish her. And she is just one name on a long list of Trump political enemies that DOJ is reportedly targeting. From Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve to James Comey, numerous Democratic members of Congress, John Brennan, Jack Smith, Democratic officials in Minnesota, Chris Krebs, Miles Taylors, and more. And those are just the ones we know about. In contrast to these politically motivated investigations, grasping at something they can charge their enemies with, we now have concrete evidence of disgusting criminality revealed in the Epstein files. So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question
How-
the way I
There
want to
she
answer the
goes.
question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer
theatrics
the
are
question the way I
ridiculous.
asked it.
Chairman
How many have you
Jordan, I'm
indicted?
not going to get in the gutter with these people,
How many
but
have you-
I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
the time
I
belongs.
think it's very
Reclaiming
interesting.
my time.
I think it's very
Reclaiming my time.
interesting
You can
that
reclaim
he
your
talks
time,
about they
Reclaiming my time,
indicted.
Mr.
The
Chairman.
president said they
Close the
indicted
clock.
him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please
They
stop the
sure
clock
did.
and stop
he
the clock and
indicted-
restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in
theatrics.
order.
I think they don't want to hear her talk, and so they have to talk over her because they don't want to know the truth. They keep talking all over her. Hey, morning, Ann.
The time
Reclaiming my
belongs to
time
the
and
gentleman
reel back
from
the
New
clock,
York.
please.
We will give you a few more seconds.
Sorry.
We will do that. But when
Reclaiming
you ask
my-
a question, the
The
witness
question
gets to
was-
answer. You may not like the answer, but she
Right.
gets
The
to
question
answer.
Right.
was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like
What?
the answer,
Reclaiming
Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest.
Reclaiming
So
my-
he asked a
Reclaiming my
4-minute
time.
question.
Restore 45
And
seconds,
I am
Mr. Nadler,
going
please,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Reclaiming my
answer.
time.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you
We have-
started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I
anything,
did tell you because we
washed
saw
up
what you did in the
loser
Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I
Not a
said that
few more,
already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go
All
ahead.
right.
Reclaiming my time. The answer to my question, how many of Epstein's co-conspirators has she indicted, is 0. You have been the Attorney General for a whole year, and your DOJ fired the lead prosecutor of this case, sat on evidence this entire time, and claimed falsely last July that there were no more leads. It took an act of Congress for you to finally release part of the Epstein files, and when you did, you included personal information about the victims while protecting the names of abusers.
Time of the gentleman
None of
has
the perpetrators have
expired.
been brought to
Yep,
justice,
Fonzo.
but enormous resources
Time
have
of the
been dedicated to
gentleman has
pursuing Trump's
expired, and
It's
obviously
clear
there
that
was-
under your leadership, the Department of Justice
there
no
was
longer
no
works.
question in there.
Okay, that's a way to start one off with old Sattler. They don't want to know the truth. I got a short clip, 2 minutes.
(1100 Thursday). Rear Admiral Leah Reynolds stood in the center of a circular clearing on the north side of Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. She stared at the 2 upright posts supporting a crossbeam from which hung a thick rope with sliding knots. Former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, wrists shackled and ankles hobbled, was standing on an elevated platform next to a loop of rope that moved in the morning breeze. The man who once ran the Pentagon under Barack Obama looked smaller now, gaunt, eyes recessed by months in a windowless cell. Beside him stood the hangman, a Marine whose uniform bore no name tag, no rank, no insignia. Admiral Reynolds spoke. "Charles Hagel, having been found guilty of treason against the United States, you are hereby sentenced to death by hanging. The execution will be carried out immediately. You are entitled to a final statement." Hagel didn't flinch. He'd refused a final statement, but before the hangman gagged and bagged him, Hagel shouted, "This isn't over." The trapdoor beneath Hagel's feet swung open at 11:15 hours. His body jerked and twitched for a few seconds, then hung still. A Navy physician checked Hagel's vitals. The cervical fracture had been instantaneous. Unlike other deep state executions, there had been no theatrics, just a clean military-enforced death cold efficiency the tribunals had promised since the first deep state arrests began rolling in 2021. Admiral Reynolds remained at attention until the body was cut down and zipped into a black bag. Then she turned to the assembled JAG officers, MPs, and a small contingent of Marine Guards.
Just about
Today
over.
wasn't about revenge, she said, her words clipped. It was about restoration. The Republic does not tolerate betrayal from within. Not anymore. Outside the wire, the world remains oblivious. Mainstream outlets continue to dismiss Gitmo proceedings as conspiracy theater. Inside, the message is clear. The rope doesn't lie. We have no corporate advertisers, nor billionaire philanthropists looking to support efforts to expose the deep state's evil agenda. Every donation, irrespective of the amount, is appreciated and helps ensure our survival in these perilous times.
That was off News Force. I got that one from. Got a 3-minute one, and I got the first Benny video.
Who have known that this has been going on for almost a decade. We are the ones who were ostracized. We were the ones who were told we were conspiracy theorists. We were the ones who were told we were crazy and had relationships end because of these very details. I want to make it very clear because I'm seeing so many videos right now about this whole Epstein thing. Some of us had our lives completely demolished just for speaking up for the children. When I started speaking out about the importance of sunlight, instead of getting a shot, recognizing that the people you claim to love and worship are not who you think they are. The fact that 300,000 children have gone missing in 1 year in one country, and apparently no one knows what happened to them. Just because I was using my First Amendment right to speak out, I was ostracized. I was blacklisted. I was thrown into the gutters of social media, having to start over again from scratch, which my small business was attached to. So hence, I also had to close my small business. As grateful as I am that there are so many people now being able to speak out about this freely, I do ask that all of you do one very important thing. Because it does matter. Thank your local conspiracy theorist. Thank them. And next time, I hope you choose to listen or research something yourself long before it becomes trendy to talk about. If you're wondering why I'm not making more videos on the Epstein list, is because I've said everything that I've wanted to say 7 years ago. Now I'm going to allow the rest of you the time you need to wake up, to see it for yourself, to finally accept it as truth, because it's not coming from my mouth, but from the mouth of social media or mainstream media. And it's so unfortunate. Let that also be one more lesson.
This is pretty good.
Mainstream media will not tell you the truth until they are forced to. Trust your local conspiracy theorist. Thank them. Apologize to them. Because I'll tell you right now, we are all not surprised, but we could really see at this moment who is truly awake and who's still hiding behind the shame, behind the pride. And yes, I know some of you might want to look at this video and say, you need to be talking more about the victims. We are, but the victim list extended the moment that some of us decided to talk about it too soon. The major thing that I care about the most, that I've been caring about the most, is when is it going to stop? When is it going to change? When are the people who are responsible for this going to be held accountable? And until then, I'm not allowing my energy to be siphoned off by the mainstream media. And I suggest you don't either. That was my heart to heart. I love you.
Okay, that was well said there. Right on target. So I got a 2-parter short clip. I'm not sure if I played it fine ago. It's been a while, so not sure how old this is. This is part 1.
Fight in the sky.
About 30 seconds.
Baw diddy, baw da, bang dee dang diddy diddy diddy, chuck the buggy and up, chuck the buggy. My name is Kid Rock. Baw diddy, baw da, bang dee dang diddy diddy diddy, chuck the buggy and up, chuck the buggy. Baw
5
diddy,
minutes
baw
on the
da,
first
bang. I'm not embarrassed.
Okay.
What's the big emergency?
Sir, Bill Clinton is here. He says he has information about Porge Poros, something about a global conspiracy. He says he brought McDonald's.
Send him in. Bill, you look terrible. What's going on?
Porge Poros, the corrupt billionaire criminal
Hey,
mastermind,
Mike.
is buying up gold reserves all over the world. Central banks, private holdings, mining operations. He's cornering the global gold market. He tried to buy the U.S. gold reserves too until you soiled things by winning the last election.
That all sounds pretty shady, but it's not illegal. Why come to us?
Because I suspect there's a bigger plan at play here, something more sinister. Whatever he's planning, I believe it will throw the entire world gold market into chaos.
Well, that's not good. I love gold. It's classy.
Do you have any idea what this plan might be?
No, but I know the man who does. The man that set up every international gold sale for Poros, every introduction, every transaction, every back channel deal. Joe Biden.
Why are you telling us this, Bill? I thought you were friends with Poros. Same social circles, same parties, same islands.
Those were humanitarian. Look, the truth is that Porge Poros is a card cheat.
What?
We've been playing canasta every Thursday for 15 years. The guy cheats every single time. It just pisses me off.
You're revealing a major sinister plot by an evil supervillain that might end in world economic collapse because he cheated you at canasta?
Have you ever played cards with a card cheat? It is infuriating. I complained to Hillary, but she just says, "Oh, really? You're complaining about someone cheating? Well, I guess now you know what it feels like." She makes me call her Madam President. It's weird.
Okay, Bill, we'll look into it. Whatever Poros is planning, he's not going to get away with it.
Good luck, guys. And if you get a chance, tell him I want my $40 back.
Looks like we've got to interrogate Joe Biden. Shall I assemble a team, sir?
Yes, assemble a team. This is not going to be easy, but we'll make him talk. Torture, blackmail, bribery, whatever it
Another
takes.
minute on the first part.
Torture, blackmail, bribery. How far will our heroes go to extract the truth from Sleepy Joe Biden? Subscribe to the Mr. Reagan YouTube channel to find out in the next thrilling adventure of MAGA Man.
So that was the first one. Is that one okay? Second one coming up here. And they got music there for a minute. Thanks, Fine Eagle. Oh, wait, that was part one. What's going on here? 5 minutes.
Child. Well, it won't help you, Maduro. Your time is up. F8.
You sunk my oil tanker.
Hasta el final, asshole.
Coño, carajo.
Oil Tanker, the new game from Built and Madly, proud sponsor of Mega Man.
El papá de los pelucones.
Ah.
This is not going to be easy, but we'll make him talk. Torture, blackmail, bribery, whatever it takes.
He's going to steal all the gold in Fort Knox.
Well, that was easy.
That's what you're talking about, right? The Forge Porous heist? More money in there than a Somali daycare. A lot of gold in Fort Stocks. I mean, Snort Fox. I mean, Sports Rocks. No, I mean, you know the thing.
So it's a heist.
Was that supposed to be a secret?
Oh yeah, that's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
Okay, Joe. Sure thing. See you soon, buddy.
Did somebody say secrets? You would not believe how much money I stole through Ukraine. And you didn't really think I got 80 million votes, did you? And wait till you hear what really happened to Barack's personal chef. Tell him the big guy sent you.
All right, team, listen up. Forge Poros is planning to steal all the gold in Fort Knox.
Wasn't there supposed to be an audit of Fort Knox back in like February?
Who the hell is this guy?
That's Christopher Coles, the YouTuber known as Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Reagan. Okay. What's your superpower, kid?
I'm, lucky.
Everything seems to turn out okay when he's around, sir. Statistically impossible success rate. We ran the numbers.
Okay. He can stay.
To Mr. Reagan's point, we actually did the audit, sir. Contrary to online conspiracy theorists, we've actually increased our gold supply. 29,000 metric tons, about 80% of all global monetary gold.
80%? How is that possible?
That seems pretty good.
The reason we didn't publicize the findings is that we don't actually want foreign governments to know this. If they knew how much gold we're sitting on,
we'd have every country in the world trying to take it.
Exactly.
Probably China. I just like saying that word, China.
So Poros isn't just trying to steal some
Under
gold.
2 minutes,
He's
guys.
trying to steal most of the gold.
Better call in
Eddie
somebody
will be
others for
back.
backup. Hey, pilot, you'd better step on it. We've got to save Fort Knox.
Will our heroes reach Fort Knox in time? Can they stop the diabolical scheme of Forge Poros? Subscribe to the Mr. Reagan YouTube channel to find out in the next pulse-pounding adventure of Mega Man.
So that was kind of interesting. Thanks, Papa Dew. I
Rudy, thank you for being here. I'm sorry, there's just so much to unpack.
How are you,
losing
Vinny?
my mind. I'm losing my mind, Rudy, over all this. We were right, dude. We were right. You were right in Georgia.
Yep.
You were 100% confirmed right.
100%.
Gabbard and all that. So I don't even know where to begin here. Maybe we should start there.
100% right about Georgia. I think so far everything else that's come out. I'll tell you a little about Epstein, though, if you want.
Please. Oh,
I
please.
represented the president when the Epstein stuff was first going to come out. So myself and our team investigated it thoroughly, and we were ready for it. You know, we were ready for some misstatement about it, or because they screwed up, you know, so many other things. Yeah. I can tell you beyond any doubt that there is no connection between Donald Trump
Thanks, Lord.
and
I wasn't sure.
The criminal part of Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, there's very little connection except when they were very young. And the story of how he threw him out is actually even tougher than he remembers it. I mean, he basically did it. Two of the women from the massage place at Mar-a-Lago came to him. Now, this is way back in 06, 07. And one of them was afraid to come to him because Epstein had been bothering her. So she went to the person in charge, and the person in charge said, well, you have no idea what Mr. Trump is like. And the lady was frightened. And they go up, and she tells him, Mr. Epstein is being inappropriate with me. He said, what? And he looks at the older woman. He says, is it really bad? And she said, yeah, it's really bad. It's not sex, but it's really bad, touching and stuff. He said, okay, let me show you what I'm going to do. Calls up Epstein, doesn't get him on the phone. He leaves a message. He said, this is Donald Trump. And probably calls him by his last name. Epstein, come by the golf course later today. All your stuff is there. And don't you ever show your face at the golf course of Mar-a-Lago again. Boom, hangs up. Then he calls up his director of security, puts him on the phone and says, this guy's out. Collect all his stuff. I don't think we have any lockers at Mar-a-Lago. If he does, get rid of everything he's got. But go over to the golf course. He has a locker there. Take everything, put it in it, make it nice so he can't complain. Give him everything. If there's any doubt, give it to him. Then put his picture up and don't let him in ever again. Ever. That's the last time he really ever thought about Epstein until this came up. Mm-hmm. And the connection between them earlier was, I wouldn't call him a friend. I'd call him one of 1,000 people that he knew and went out with here and again. Now, you remember Trump is the image of Trump as like the nighttime sort of man about town in New York was not true. Of course, he got pictures like that because he was so famous in Page Six and that sort of thing. Trump is a guy who goes home and sleeps at night, doesn't drink and he doesn't smoke. Doesn't make him a lot of fun at those parties, right? Nor does he have a lot of fun at those parties. When I was campaigning with him, which was 5 months straight in a row, he did that because he had to. I mean, we would fly from halfway around America so he could go sleep in his bed. Every time I had a cigar, I'd have to go sneak out somewhere. And so this is a totally, and then of course Mueller didn't have it. And which tells you, I mean, they scrubbed everything. They brought out parking tickets he got at 14 years old, you know, by driving too early. I mean, they were ready to prosecute for jaywalking. So we were his lawyers then were 100% confident that even in the screwed up, dishonest system we had, the Biden system, they never dare to do Epstein because we could sue their ass off. And that's the truth to today. He had nothing to do with that part of Epstein that even gets close to criminal. Tragically, so do many other people, and some don't. So you look at a list, you got 20 perfectly innocent people who maybe were his clients in business. Or, hey, maybe they were Democrats who were trying to get money out of him. He was a big Democratic fundraiser. Or maybe they were guys who went to the island. That's where you got to look. I mean, and even then, you're not going to get all. There are people that went to that island that had no idea what he was. They thought he was a playboy with girls. Sometimes they would say girls who were too young. But they didn't mean They meant seven. They didn't mean 17 and 16 and 15. They meant like 20 and 21 and 22. Then there were the group that knew about the 12 and 13-year-olds. It'd be really hard to distinguish them unless you, and that's why there's so much difficulty here. You're going to destroy lots of people. A lot of people don't have the affirmative defense that Trump had. I mean, Trump went out of his way to throw him out of Mar-a-Lago. There are a lot of people, God forbid it ever came, then other people could call. We probably get 100 witnesses. And, but most people can't. Most people, their name is there. Maybe he was a client. And nobody else knows what their relationship was with him. So I don't want to see any of these pedophiles go free. I'm not a Democrat, like in California, that reduced the penalties on pedophiles. They're the ones who like the pedophiles, not us. But on the other hand, it's a horrible thing if you have a man under suspicion of being a pedophile and he's not. That's a terrible thing.
So many follow-up questions, but you're exactly right. Like a good example of this is Elon Musk, who was smeared all day on Friday because he had one email exchange with Jeffrey Epstein where he effectively told him to screw off, right? But just his name just being there.
Yeah, Mike, I think I heard someone said that 26 is when the Clintons got to be back again, I think.
You know, zero evidence that Jeffrey Epstein even ever met Elon Musk. Elon Musk denies it entirely, but just his name there was enough. Meanwhile, you have Bill Gates. I mean, I want to ask you about this Clinton stuff, you know, because
I can't say that. I don't know. I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But if you're getting into
the photos, so we got the photos. If we just put up the photos,
category of there's a lot of smoke, and it may or may not be fire. There you are. There's a lot of smoke with Clinton. Merely going to the island puts you in a little more of a suspect category, right? Going or not going to that island would put you in a more suspect category. And then the crazy photos of the touching of girls, some of the testimony that might be true or untrue. So if you want to go around with a large degree of circumstantial evidence, yeah, Clinton's got that. Am I going to say for sure? I don't know. I'm a defense lawyer as well as a prosecutor, and I don't say for sure until I see the definitive evidence. I haven't seen that. I've seen lots of stuff that raises extraordinarily serious questions, but I haven't seen the definitive proof. Now, let's go to Trump. I've seen stuff that proves he's innocent. Yeah. You don't throw him out of Mar-a-Lago if he has stuff on you. And that's ridiculous. The guy, I'm sure that Epstein had a file on people to protect himself, and if he were doing something inappropriate with Trump, he would have kept it. And when Trump started saying bad things about him, he would have threatened him, and would have kept his mouth shut. I mean, that's another thing I can actually prove. If we ever have to prove it, I can have people testify that is absolutely true. That he kept the file, and that people had to be real careful what they said about him. And Trump was not careful about what he said about him at all, nor is it Elon Musk.
So that's the first Benny video. The first 15 one is going to be a documentary, the one on Epstein, 15 minutes. So let me know if you guys want me to play it or not while we start it. If it's good to play or, stop it or not.
No client list, no blackmail, nothing left behind at all. The banker who spent his career building a mysterious fortune while he managed money for billionaire clients that probably didn't exist, while also trafficking girls to and from a private island in the Caribbean at the same time as he hosted some of the world's foremost politicians, businessmen, intellectuals, and celebrities as house guests, he had acted completely alone. It was all an unfortunate coincidence and nothing more. The story of Jeffrey Epstein faded into the past as the world kept turning.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Or at least that's what the story would have been if there weren't already mountains and mountains of evidence of Epstein being not just a psychopath, but also at the center of a crime ring that involved the world's most powerful people, procuring victims for them to abuse together. Even now, with the federal government conflicting themselves and going back on their word in regards to his case, the controversy and mystery around Jeffrey Epstein has reached a fever pitch. Silence doesn't make it go away. It's only made the questions grow louder as people's trust in our leadership is turning to dust. But in order to understand how Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to happen, what made him the monster he was, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, before the island, before the fortunes, before the world knew his name. And we have to take a much closer look at his life and the system that enabled him. Jeffrey Epstein first appears in any public capacity in July of 1980 when he's 27 years old. But the context is very strange. There's an article I found from Cosmopolitan magazine where he was listed as Bachelor of the Month with a tiny blurb and a black and white photo next to it. It says, financial strategist Jeffrey Epstein talks only to people who make over $1 million a year. If you're a cute Texas girl, write this New York dynamo at 55 Water Street, 49th floor, New York, blah, blah, blah. Because for the first 20 years of his career, Epstein garnered only occasional and brief mentions in the press. He had no real public recognition at all in the way that most high-level bankers might. And that's because there wasn't really a sensible explanation as to how he got there in the first place. Jeffrey Edward Epstein, born in Brooklyn in 1953, was the son of two working-class Jewish parents who, by all accounts, were completely normal. His mother, Pauline, worked a full-time job as a teacher's assistant while raising the kids, and his father worked for the City of New York's Parks Department as a gardener. Former friends and neighbors would use words like simple, humble, and gentle when talking about Epstein's parents, his brothers, and even Jeffrey himself. One former neighbor would later write that he was a nerdy little boy. People said that he was smart, overweight, always smiling, but mostly quiet. In high school, Epstein liked algebra and calculus, and he was on the math team, but his teammates would later describe him as not sticking out all that much. But he was smart enough to graduate high school in 1969, 2 years early, and he would then attend Cooper Union College, a very small school in Manhattan known for offering completely free tuition. He studied math there, although after 2 years he transferred to NYU, but he ended up leaving there after 3 years without any college degree at all. But within 2 months, Epstein had picked up a full-time job anyway. He'd become a high school math teacher, not just at any school, but at one of the most prestigious in Manhattan, a school for the children of the elites. The students were the children of highly paid bankers, developers, politicians, people that could afford to pay a tuition equal to $50,000 a year today. By the time he started teaching at Dalton, Epstein was almost a completely different person. Basically, as a teacher, Jeffrey Epstein was a sleazy scumbag and a bit of a disaster. In the mid-1970s, students at one of New York's most esteemed prep schools were surprised to encounter a new teacher who pushed the limits of the school's strict dress code, wandering the halls in a fur coat, gold chains, and an open shirt that exposed his chest. But it wasn't just a willingness to dress provocatively, it was how he interacted with students that left an impression on many of them for decades after. He was apparently popular among female students, as many young teachers might be, but the problem was that he not only embraced the attention, but also seemed to have chased after it. The story goes that at one point, he even started showing up at students' parties, including ones where they would have been drinking underage. But before this private school teacher in his mid-20s could ever get involved in something that might implicate him in a serious way, Epstein was fired from the Dalton School for performance issues. He simply wasn't a good teacher. But at the same time, though, he was able to move his career in a way that I could only describe as failing upwards. Because if you fast forward about 20 years, Epstein was no longer this sort of aimless college dropout who had a reputation for being a bit of a creep towards students at the school he worked at. It was almost as if Epstein would go on to become a completely, literally different person. When you look deeper at how exactly Epstein goes from this disgraced school teacher to flying a jetliner around the world while he rubs elbows with the rich and famous, the puzzle pieces don't really fit together. It would only be a few months after getting fired from the Dalton School in 1976 until Epstein found another job. Specifically, he got hired at the giant investment firm Bear Stearns as an assistant to a floor trader. And it's the second time he did that in just a couple of years. Because if he did do one thing right while working at Dalton, it was impress the students' rich and powerful parents.
10 minutes, you guys, 10 minutes.
Specifically, he was hired off the recommendation of a student's parent he had impressed who also happened to be friends with Alan Greenberg, CEO of the bajillion-dollar Bear Stearns investment bank. Greenberg was also known for coming from a working class background, and he liked to hire people with what he called PSD degrees: poor, smart, and desperate to be rich. Whether or not getting his foot in the door was his original goal while working at a private school, whatever it was, Epstein had launched himself up the ladder in a massive way. And
And it's kind of weird, but Epstein's time at this giant financial services firm, it wasn't all that different from his time as a teacher. Within just 4 years there, he gets promoted from junior assistant to limited partner, which is a pretty crazy trajectory for someone with no college degree. But then, just a year after that, he was actually asked to quit or be fired during an SEC investigation into insider trading at Bear Stearns. But for the rest of the 1980s, he would start or get involved in a strange series of businesses that, if we didn't know they existed, kind of sound made up. Probably the strangest out of everything he did during this time was Towers Financial Corporation, a collection agency that was in the business of buying consumer medical debt. While he was hired as a consultant and paid the equivalent of $69,000 a month today, the first job he was given was to start using the company as a raiding vessel for corporate takeovers. In the 80s, there was this popular practice of buying a large stake in a corporation, then firing top executives, and then downsizing even further to increase the share value before selling. Basically, you take over and ruin a company just to make money from it. And their first move was to attempt a takeover of a kind of old, declining airline, Pan American World Airways, in 1987. A year later, they also tried to take over Emory Air Freight. And while both attempts failed, that wasn't the problem. The problem is that they were using money they didn't actually have. Basically, while this company was claiming to be a debt collection agency, they had also raised $500 million from investors while promising big returns. They used the money on private jets, fancy houses, expensive cars, and their plan for paying it all back was to attempt those crazy corporate takeovers that were supposed to make enough profit to cover everything. But then when the takeovers failed, they had nowhere to turn, no money to repay the investors, and it all fell apart. And so in 1993, Towers Financial would implode after being exposed as one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history. But when it came time for his former business partner, Stephen Hoffenberg, to be deposed and tell his side of the story in court, he didn't just throw Epstein under the bus, he basically blamed the whole thing on him. But by the time the company collapsed and was being investigated, Epstein had already been gone for 3 years. He would never be charged with anything related to Towers Financial. Meanwhile, his business partner Hoffenberg, he would spend nearly 20 years in prison. I don't think we have an exact reason why Epstein was never charged for being on the inside of one of the biggest Ponzi schemes ever. One explanation is that Hoffenberg could have been lying. His testimony during his case was considered kind of generally unreliable. He would lie about a lot of stuff, wouldn't tell the truth. Another reason is that if Epstein was never really on the record as being deeply involved in the fraud, because apparently they didn't use his name for the trades or whatever it was, it's just hearsay. We can't really prove that he's involved in the scam, so it's not worth pursuing if they did have Hoffenberg right in front of them and they could just punish him. However, another person would later write that it was only because of lazy prosecution that Epstein walked away and that he was definitely involved as far as anyone can tell. Especially because it's well recorded that during the peak of the Towers Financial scam, Epstein was physically accompanying Hoffenberg around the world on his jet. He was meeting with investors. He was with him a lot of the time. And that's because somehow, after walking away from a moderately high-paying consultant job and apparently having nothing to do with the hundreds of millions of dirty money they made, he somehow pops up again a couple years later, completely reinvented, like his old self never existed at all. But the idea that Epstein's career is just kind of a story about failing upwards, like I mentioned earlier, that doesn't even really explain how he ends up where he did. Yeah, a teacher at a rich private school might get hired by one of his students' rich parents, okay? But 15 years later, walking away unscathed from one of the worst financial crimes in American history. I mean, seriously, most of us probably don't remember, but Towers Financial was absolutely horrible. Even back at that point in his life, a lot of his situations sound like a conspiracy. But of course, that's only one of these really odd stories that have been told about Epstein's careers over the years that imply all these different truths about how he ended up where he did. Multiple people over the years, journalists, friends, business partners, they all recalled Epstein suggesting or hinting that he worked for an intelligence agency, although he never specified which one. But in the mid to late 80s, during the same time he was working at Towers Financial, he also worked with Adnan Khashoggi, the Saudi businessman with ties to the CIA and Mossad, who is best known for being the middleman in transferring American weapons from Israel to Iran during the Iran-Contra affair. Add on to that the fact that Epstein was later found to have a fake Austrian passport with multiple stamps from the Middle East. It only further paints a very confusing picture about Epstein's career. There just isn't a normal, sensible conclusion to this part of Epstein's life. Even after connecting all the dots, it still doesn't make sense. He starts off by dropping out of college without getting his degree, only to get hired at a prestigious school that he then gets fired from for being a bad teacher, only to then get hired at a hugely prestigious investment firm that he also then gets fired from, only to then end up getting implicated in one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in American history that he somehow never faces a single charge for being involved in. Along the way, he acquires fake passports, he does business with arms dealers in the Middle East, and at the end of all of it, He's filthy rich. At every single turn, you see him get not punished, but actually rewarded for stealing, cheating, and lying. But the craziest part of all of that is that that was just the beginning. In the late 80s, Epstein forms a new company, Epstein & Co., a wealth management firm where he establishes immediately that he's not going to take any clients with a net worth of under $1 billion.
4 minutes.
It was around the time that Epstein launched Epstein & Co., his investment services company, that his life kind of just seems to completely change all over again for what feels like the 100th time in a row. By the early 90s, he's moving like someone who's in charge of an empire. He's flying around the world in a giant jetliner. He's acquiring massive properties around the US, but at the same time, his name never shows up in Forbes. He has no public filings, no client list, no office, but to the people around him, it looks like he owns the world. By the late 90s, Epstein's doing what I could only describe as flying too close to the sun. He's friends with Donald Trump, the Prince of England, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He even buys a literal island where he would build an extravagant compound for hosting parties. But after a series of conspicuous stunts, one of which was a trip to Africa on his private plane with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey as passengers, it gets to a point where Epstein is too big to ignore. The media, the general public, people are wondering how Epstein made all this money, where he came from, what's the point of everything he does. How he got to this level of social status is yet another strange story in this never-ending list of strange stories. And a big part of it would be this very, very strange story of his connection to the Maxwell family media empire. Robert Maxwell was born Ian Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Hawk. He was a media tycoon businessman with a really strange life. After the war, he changes his name to Robert Maxwell, moves to England, and gets elected into the British Parliament. But he also quickly starts building a media empire across Europe at the same time. Over a period of around 50 years, he ends up owning the Daily Mirror. He owns part of MTV in Europe, the London Daily News. At one point, he even buys the US-based Macmillan Publishers for over $2 billion in the late 80s. But throughout his life, he was also closely linked to Israeli intelligence. Point being, though, is that one of Robert Maxwell's 9 children, Ghislaine, had long been a prominent socialite in London and New York. And after her father died and the family empire collapses in the early 90s, she ends up living in Manhattan, where she would end up dating none other than Jeffrey Epstein. Notably, Ghislaine, the daughter of this internationally known billionaire spy for Israel, would become the primary link between Epstein and his powerful social network. Out of many things she would do for him, she would be the person who introduces him to Prince Andrew, Saudi royals, celebrities, politicians. Of course, Epstein was already pretty well connected, but his relationship with Maxwell was pivotal in him inserting himself into the upper echelon of society. In March of 2003, Vanity Fair journalist Vicky Ward sets out to write a profile about Jeffrey Epstein and figure out what exactly he's all about once and for all.
Lately, Jeffrey Epstein's high-flying style has been drawing oohs and ahs. The bachelor financier lives in New York's largest private residence, claims to only take billionaires as clients, and flies celebrities like Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey on his Boeing 727. But Pierce's air of mystery in the picture changes.
And her point was that after peeling back his mask of mystery, something far more alarming than anticipated would be revealed.
Her research led her to question the idea that Epstein made all of his money with an exclusive and private investment firm where he'd only take on billionaires as clients. She suggests that Leslie Wexner is the only client Epstein ever had, but even more than that his business isn't really how he made his money at all. What she found made it look like Epstein really wasn't a genius investor at all, but probably acquired the majority of his mysterious fortune from the Tower's financial Ponzi scheme, which he was far more involved in than the official story would suggest. She essentially made him look like a fraud, a con man with no substantial investing history, hiding behind the persona of an elite financial mastermind while building up a social network to make him look a lot more sophisticated than he really was. It's even worse than what they did publish about him is what they didn't.
Okay, that was a documentary of Jeffrey Epstein. I just found that guy. That's the first documentary I played on him. So let's see what we got next. We got Q first video.
What's up, family? Welcome back out of the darkness. I am Q. So one of the things that I think is absolutely terrible is that for some reason we stopped teaching civics in our country and we stopped teaching history in our country. Socialism and communism has never worked anywhere, full stop, period. It has always led to death and destruction. But for some reason, there's always someone who believes that they can do it and finally do it right. But it doesn't work. You cannot offer people equal results for unequal work. You cannot do it. You cannot say we're going to make everybody the same, because unfortunately, by making everybody the same, you are making everybody what? Equally miserable? It cannot work. The government cannot legislate people's ambition. And that's why capitalism works. Now, our version of capitalism in the United States is working less and less commonly, simply because we've become more corporatist, but I could get into that in another time. But Zoran Mandani is absolutely in deep, deep water right now. His campaign is falling apart, or not his campaign, his cabinet, his mayoral aspirations are falling apart. The guy has gotten elected. He just got sworn in, and his legacy is shot. So he's already come out less than a month after being sworn in, and he said that that his rental assistance program is not going to work. It's too expensive. Now, these are things that he should have known before he promised people that he was going to do it. He also then went on to say that his transportation program, giving everyone free public transportation, was also not going to work. In fact, the cost actually went up on public transportation. Liberals, leftists can try all they want to try to buy people's votes with other people's money. And it always sounds good, giving away free goodies. And people are desperate enough to believe it and actually buy into it. But the fact of it is that capitalism is undefeated. Capitalism works. Capitalism rewards hard work. It rewards people who are willing to take risk and step outside of their comfort zone and actually put in the work. And when you start to disincentivize people to do that, you wind up with a lot of deadbeats, and you wind up with a lot of people who just don't see the point of getting up and getting going if they are not going to be rewarded for the extra work and extra risk. So disincentivizing a population is a terrible thing to do. And we see his administration falling apart as it is, which all of us knew was going to happen. He wanted to raise the taxes on millionaires and billionaires, and the state legislator is now saying no. Kathy Hochul's like, you're not getting me into that. I've got to get elected now. I'm not about to go and raise taxes on my donors, on corporations. And so after making all of these promises in the first month of his administration, they are all promises that are being broken simply because he didn't take the time to read a history book. Socialism, communism doesn't work. And those people that voted for them, shame on him. I hope that they get everything that they deserve. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below. I'll see you next.
Okay, the first cue on some more short videos.
Just how much money Minneapolis lost during Operation Metro Surge. In 30 days, Mayor Fry is saying that their city lost $203 million. Isn't it ironic that he was able to figure out that total? He was never able to figure out just how much money the fraudulent businesses were stealing from taxpayers. In lost wages, $47 million, and small businesses lost out on $81 million. I want to remind you that the protesters in Minneapolis, they didn't go to work. So yeah, you're not going to get paid. And also they said that businesses throughout the Minneapolis and Minnesota area needed to close for several days. It was called an economic shutdown, and people were told to not spend any money in any businesses. Also, They're saying
think this
now
is
that
Shirley's mom.
8,700 children need some type of
sure,
mental
but I'm pretty
help.
sure it is.
Well, they also shut down the schools during this protest time, and they told kids to go out and protest. So they kept them out of school, told them to go protest. Maybe that had something to do with their mental health. And he's also saying that 76,000 people in the Minneapolis area need food now. The federal government did cut off federal funding until many businesses in Minneapolis could actually prove that they were legit businesses. So maybe a lot of these people work for those fraudulent businesses, and now the federal funding is cut off, so they're not getting money. If you ask me, the protesters and weak leadership are to blame for the loss of money in Minneapolis, not the federal government. Let me know your thoughts on this one.
Okay, another good one from her. Did we play this one yesterday, you guys?
Become a poster child for DEI and gender madness. This has led to government. Mr. Chairman, this is not a concert. This audience can just settle down. I want to reclaim my
the
time.
clock, and the gentlelady's right. Under the rules of the House, the chairman is responsible for maintaining order and preserving decorum in the committee room. I expect audience members to be respectful of the committee. So we'll
I'd like to reclaim my time too,
you
Mr.
reclaim
Chairman.
it. Absolutely. Ms.
This has
Mace.
led to government-sanctioned racial discrimination and the erasure of women. Article 1, Section 8, Clause
Here we
17
go, here we
provides
go.
Congress plenary authority over the District of Columbia. Using this authority today,
Yes,
I'll be
I like this one.
introducing the No DEI in DC Act. This bill will rip the DEI and gender bender nonsense out of the DC government root and branch and restore common sense and equal treatment under the law. As the individuals charged with writing DC laws, signing DC laws, and enforcing DC's laws, we have some questions for you on the meanings of some of the curious terms we have found in the DC Code. My first question for Mayor Bowser, it's yes or no. The DC Code makes numerous references to, quote, structural or institutional racism. Do you believe the DC government is structurally or institutionally racist? Yes or no? Yes or no? Is DC government racist, institutionally racist? Yes or no? All right, you can't answer the question. So my next question for Mayor Bowser, since you're going to sit there and placate or just be quiet, in section 7-1234.02 of DC Code, you use the phrase child welfare involved birthing people. Child welfare involved birthing people. Can you explain to me what this means?
I'm not that familiar with that part of the
Okay, and
code.
so you don't know. In section 7-1234-02 of DC Code, you use the phrase justice involved incarcerated and homeless birthing people and their non-birthing partners. Can you explain to this committee what that means?
I would have to see
You
the
don't
whole
know.
section.
You're literally the mayor of DC and you don't know your own code of laws.
Well, I don't know
All right,
them
one thing we
verbatim.
noticed the DC Code struggles to define is the term woman. So Mayor Bowser, what is a woman?
I'm a woman. Are you a woman?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
I'm a woman. You're looking at one.
Okay, good. You actually, in section 3-703 of the DC Code, you use the phrase, the intersectionality of gender and race to create unique dynamics and effects. Can you explain what this means to the committee?
Where is that, ma'am?
Section 3-703 of the DC Code. Do you know what that means? No,
could
you
you give
don't
me
know
the
what that means.
title
So
of the-
chapter 14D of the DC Code establishes
Mr.
the
Chairman,
commission.
I'm happy to answer questions.
Mr.
but
Chairman, I'm going to
can't-
reclaim my time. This is not her time, it's my time. You can be quiet as I ask you questions, and then you can answer them.
Ms.
And then you can
If
answer
you
them.
would give-
I'm not, Mr. Chairman, this is my time, not hers. I'd like to reclaim my time.
Let's make good use of the time, Ms.
Chair
Mays.
I'm making very good
Chair
use of my
recognizes
time.
Ms.
There
Mays.
And you're
is-
Ms. Mays
making
has
my
the
point.
floor.
You're the mayor of DC and you don't even know your own code of laws. What is a birthing person?
I would assume it's someone who gives birth.
All right. Why don't you use, are these women? Are these moms? You think it's appropriate to call them birthing person? Can a man birth a person?
Well,
Be a
that's
birthing
what I
person?
would call it, but I don't write all the laws and I'm not familiar with every
Can men
section.
get pregnant?
No. Can men become women?
Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women? Can men become women?
Can a man become a woman?
Yeah. Can a man become a woman?
Miss
Yes
Mace,
or no? Can a man become a woman? Yes or no?
Miss Mace, I'm not here
Okay,
to
my
talk
next
about
question,
that.
Chapter 14D of the DC Code establishes the Commission on Reparations and a reparations fund to provide eligible African Americans monetary reparations or other forms of redress. Is it the position of DC government benefits should be provided to individuals on the basis of race?
I believe that the legislation requires a study.
3 minutes.
Okay, I'm asking you, is it the position of the DC government that government benefits should be provided on the basis of race?
If you're
is the
referring to
question.
that legislation, I believe it requires a study.
Okay, I'm asking you a question. Do you believe that government benefits should be given out on the basis of race? That is the question. This is the third time I'm asking.
We have any number of benefits programs, and eligibility is established.
You're not answering
per-
any of these
per program.
questions. I'll give it to you. You're slick. In section 2-1383 of the DC Code, you use the phrase social value of the LGBTQ community business economy to the district. Can you explain what this means to the committee?
It means that LGBT businesses provide economic benefit to the district's economy.
Do you think all businesses provide economic benefit to the DC economy?
They should, or they would be out of business.
Yeah, of course. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Chair.
Rep. Nancy Mace's questioning of D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser was a focused exercise in congressional oversight, aimed less at optics and more at exposing what she views as ideological overreach embedded in the district's laws. Citing Congress's constitutional authority over D.C., Mace framed her inquiry as a defense of clarity, equal treatment, and legislative accountability, while previewing her proposed No DEI in D.C. Act. Rather than debating abstractions, Mace anchored questions directly in the D.C. Code, repeatedly asking city leadership to define specific statutory language. Terms such as birthing people, intersectionality of gender and race, and race-based reparations were not rhetorical inventions, but citations from law. Her core argument was simple. If elected officials cannot clearly explain the language they enforce, those laws fail a basic test of transparency and democratic legitimacy. Mayor Bowser's reluctance to provide yes or no answers, particularly on institutional racism, gender definitions, and race-based benefits, became central to Mace's critique. To Mace, the evasiveness illustrated how modern governance increasingly relies on ambiguity to shield contested policies from scrutiny. Oversight, in her view, exists precisely to challenge that ambiguity before it hardens into permanent statute. Mace also pressed a constitutional concern, questioning whether government benefits should ever be allocated on the basis of race, and whether sex-based legal terms can be replaced without consequence. Her emphasis was not cultural provocation, but legal precision. Laws must be clear to be enforceable, neutral to be just, and understandable to the public they govern. This exchange underscored a broader shift on Capitol Hill, where oversight hearings are increasingly used to interrogate the ideological assumptions behind public law. Mace's message was unmistakable. Clarity is not discrimination. Definitions are not extremism, and equal protection requires more than aspirational language. It requires accountability from those writing and enforcing the law.
Okay. So that was a wild one from another senator on the Republican side. We got more fraud, you guys.
Us for the KTLA 5 News at noon, I'm Glenn Walker.
And I'm Lou Parker. The homeowner fell victim to a rising real estate fraud scheme.
3 people, including a realtor, have been arrested. KTLA 5's Omar Lewis is in Burbank with the story and how homeowners can protect themselves. Omar.
Glenn, Lou, you can imagine just how shocking this was for that homeowner to learn that he no longer had the title of this property here in Burbank. He also told police he never authorized the sale of this home located behind us here on Walnut Avenue. Yet, according to federal investigators, paperwork was filed, a loan was funded, and ownership was transferred, all without his knowledge or consent. 3 people are now in federal custody tied to this case. A 4th person is still on the run. Federal investigators say the scheme involving this Burbank home unfolded in late 2023 and early 2024. According to the FBI, the defendants allegedly used stolen identities of the real homeowner and a so-called buyer to fraudulently sell this $1.5 million Burbank property and secure a $975,000 loan. The complaint alleges they created fake IDs, forged signatures, falsified bank statements, and even used a fraudulent notary stamp to complete the deal. Prosecutors say once the loan was funded, escrow money was wired to a third party instead of the rightful homeowner. Those arrested include 63-year-old Glennis Cardona, a licensed real estate broker who operated an escrow company, along with Ivan Reyes and Arshak Akopian. The U.S. Attorney's Office just sent us pictures earlier this morning. Authorities are still searching for 54-year-old Basil Takriti, seen here, who investigators allege impersonated both the seller and buyer using stolen identities. The rightful homeowner here says that he was able to retain ownership of this property after hiring an attorney. But legal experts say cases like this, they highlight the importance of monitoring your property records online, which you can do there, signing up for county title alert services, and confirming any unusual loan or title activity immediately with your lender and local authorities. Back out here live, we can tell you that if convicted, each of these defendants face up to 30 years in federal prison. That is the latest for now. Reporting from Burbank, I'm Omar Lewis.
Oh, we got fraud in real estate now. And we got a 7-minute one.
Needs in one spot. And
Democrats don't understand where the rest of the country is. They don't seem to understand that Americans don't want this craziness, that the party's gotten, frankly, way too darn liberal. It's, I mean, you know, when a man's a woman and a woman's a man and this thing, you know, it's just getting a little crazy. You know, I used to think like I was actually pretty moderate. Apparently I'm like some kind of right-wing nut. I'm like, fine, I guess, bring it on. You know, I believe in good, strong security, a good, strong economy, low taxes, give more to the people so that, you know, they have the ability to spend it. I am a fiscal conservative, all these things. And like, apparently I'm a right-wing nut because I'm more and more conservative. But the reality is the Democrat Party has gotten more and more liberal and more crazy. And you know what? Americans are sick of it. Just look at this CNN survey that was done. Watch.
Democratic base, right? But what about all Americans, right? How about all voters? Voters who say the Democrats are now too liberal. Look at this percentage. It was 42% in 96, 48% in 2013, now 58% in 2025 of all voters say that the Democratic Party is too liberal. The Democrats are moving to the left, the far left is gaining power, and there could be some electoral repercussions because what we see right now is voters, the clear majority, say that they are too liberal.
This is really interesting. Thanks so much, Harry.
Thank you,
Really
Kate.
appreciate it.
She said, this is really interesting. I think we appreciate this. Listen, I think that the party has just gotten nuttier and nuttier and nuttier, and they don't recognize it. They don't appreciate it. They don't understand it. They don't realize what they are doing, in fact, to themselves. And you know how I know that? I mean, I want to take a look at a soundbite that caught my eye. Here is a reporter, I think this is from Mike Lindell's network, speaking to a Democrat representative here yesterday on Capitol Hill, telling her about this study, and the woman doesn't believe it. Watch.
The SAVE Act is an attack on civil rights and is racist. Could you just explain that further? Because 76% of Black Americans support the SAVE Act, according to CNN.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, we find it racist because at the end of the day, it's targeting Black communities with a cost burden. We've been through this historically, right? Where we've been prohibited from voting because we didn't know how many bubbles were in a soap bar. And so this is just a new iteration of that. And we're very focused on defeating it.
But if 76% of Black
That's-
Americans support
That-
voter ID, then
I don't believe that 76%.
CNN reported it.
Well, that's
Check out the
possible.
polls.
That's possible.
Okay.
But I do not agree with it.
You don't believe it. See, that's what, again, when I talk about a disconnect, they don't believe that anybody could think differently than them. I mean, Chucky Schumer, even CNN and MSNBC were all over him saying, wait a second, the study shows that Americans, all Americans, want things like voter ID. Black Americans want voter IDs. So why would you guys be against it? Because their party has gotten so left and so crazy. They're not listening to people anymore. And so this doesn't surprise me when you see this sort of disconnect. And that's why Americans are saying that the party's getting too crazy. And what are they left with? A bunch of paid protesters? The State Department coming out yesterday and naming specific groups, including a group out of China that's supported by the CCP. Neville Roy Singman being named as one of the problems, as well as other groups, because they're getting this foreign money and they're infiltrating these communities and trying to create the sort of appearance of a really psyched up protest group. And yet, how much of that is really real? And how much of that is staged? Because I think that the Democrat Party has basically lost sight of what it is, what it stands for. You have only to look at the union vote, right? To figure that one out when you see the success of how the union did with Donald Trump. Kamala Harris not getting any support. Well, that was like a mainstay, was it not, for the Democrat Party? So I think this is their future, which is good, for the rest of us. But they're not going to stand a chance. Ultimately, if this is the way they're going to continue going, and by all means, this is what we see from the likes of AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Mamdani. I mean, that one's a real train wreck, right? Anyway, it's good to have you here. Please make sure if you have not subscribed, do that for me. I'm looking at your comments in real time. We got tons of likes. Thank you. If you're just joining us after the show, please make a comment. I'm laughing at Flint Robinson. He says, yeah, I guess I'm a right-wing nut too. I guess we're all right-wing nuts, right? But it doesn't take much to be one, because if you dare to think any differently than they do, if you actually think, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, I feel like I'm Archie Bunker here. Right? Yeah, I mean, this is nuts, but it's where we are right now. And I guess more power to us. More power to us, because we'll continue winning elections. Richard, thank you very much for your generosity. Much appreciated. Democrats are communistic. Yes. Communistic indeed. The groceries, Clive Jenkins talking about the groceries, right? They're coming down regardless of what the lunatics say. I thought you were going to say something about the grocery store in Mamdani, because apparently that one's not working out well. His free grocery store in New York City, all his free stuff, someone's going to pay for it. The adults in the room have to pay for it. And you're going to destroy the economy. It's been done before. I have only to look at Venezuela, where 25 years ago, it enjoyed the highest standard of living in all of Latin America. Today, look at it. I mean, they got a lot of rehabilitation efforts to get underway there in Venezuela, but we cannot be that, all right? So we got to stamp all this nut stuff out and fast. We need sort of this rise of normalcy once again. And I think it's happening. I really do. Thank you for being here. We're going to be back live on the show again on Monday. You guys are...
Okay, the latest on Trisha. Got the lady on YouTube, 17 minutes. She had another big one yesterday. Well, let's do this one real quick. I got a short clip.
Y'all, will the backseat survive soccer season and snack time? Because somebody's got to find out. Car and Driver, the key to every car.
Well, here we go. In Michigan.
We'll do this once, 11 minutes.
Yeah, from Nebraska.
This guy's pulling up his britches. Hey, no, it like it almost had it off. I wonder what he's doing back there. Disgusting.
Let's see if he cleans it up. I don't know.
This guy does good.
And of course,
And
he just dumps it right on the ground. No regard for shit. And right on the other side of that pile of snow are the trash cans. License plate number.
And truck drivers are, Clutch sent me a clip. It'll probably be on next week, Clutch Trucker. But people are like, man,
Go to
I
1
wish
o'clock,
Buc-ee's would
come back
allow
at
us to
6,
park
guys.
there. Okay, this? Yeah, I don't blame Buc-ee's. Do you?
Remember that movie with Brad Pitt and Snatch? And he said he wanted a pair of them shoes. Well, yeah, the driver doesn't want to dirty up his shoes, but he doesn't mind dirtying up the parking lot. And that's actually is a thoroughfare for drivers to drive through back and forth between the parking and the fuel island of coming in and going out.
Welcome to this week's edition of Tales from the Truck Stop. Every Sunday, we try to get on here every Sunday, and we sit there and we gripe and complain about what we see in the truck stops. Okay, that's just what we do. So if you like this kind of garbage, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button.
That one's not really good. We'll get this one in. If I can find it. Where is it? Okay. Hey, Kobe.
Reading about how an entire state almost ran out of gas. On November 24th, 2025, Oregon's governor did something that hadn't happened in decades. She declared a fuel emergency, not because of a hurricane, not because of a war overseas, because a pipe leaked, one pipe, 400 miles long. And suddenly an entire state was scrambling. Gas stations started limiting purchases. Prices jumped overnight. Airlines at Seattle Tacoma added fuel stops to their flights because they couldn't fill up at the airport. Emergency services across 2 states held their breath. The crisis lasted 15 days. By December 9th, the pipe was fixed. Everyone went back to normal. Crisis averted. But here's what nobody wants to talk about. Nothing actually changed. The vulnerability that caused this emergency is still there, and it's getting worse. I'm Clara Monroe. If you're new here, I break down fiscal crises, government failures, and the numbers behind the headlines.
Did you buy Lotrimin or Tinactin spray? You may qualify to receive a payment from a settlement. For more information,
Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want more than just the videos, I just activated channel memberships. Members get access to a community where we discuss these topics, share news, and actually talk about what's happening before the videos even drop. Check my channel page if you want in. Now let me show you why Oregon is one pipeline accident away from a catastrophe, and why the next crisis won't be fixed in 15 days. Let's start with a number that should shock you. 0. That's how many oil refineries operate in Oregon. Not one, not a small one. None. Every gallon of gasoline that powers your car, every drop of diesel that moves freight across the state, every bit of jet fuel at Portland International, all of it comes from somewhere else. 90% flows through one pipeline, the Olympic Pipeline, 400 miles running from refineries in Washington down to Portland. One pipeline, one state, zero backup. The state's own energy department admits it. Oregon has virtually no refining capacity and no crude oil reserves. They're completely dependent on Washington refineries and that single pipeline to keep the lights on and the trucks moving. This isn't a secret. The government knows, the industry knows. And in November 2025, everyone else found out. So how did this happen? How does a state of 4 million people end up with zero ability to refine its own fuel? Go back to 2008. Oregon had one refinery, small by national standards, about 12,000 barrels a day. It sat in Portland processing crude into asphalt and other products since 1947. Not huge, but it was something. Then it closed. The operator announced plans to shut down in November 2006. By December 2008, it was done. The financial crisis was the final push, but the writing had been on the wall for years. Shrinking margins, competition from bigger facilities in Washington, regulatory costs climbing. For 2 years, state officials watched it happen. And according to government filings, no serious attempt was made to replace that capacity. No alternative sites proposed, no permits filed. The closure was treated as inevitable. Oregon crossed a line it can never uncross. At the time, the logic seemed reasonable. Why maintain expensive local capacity when Washington has bigger, more modern refineries? Let them handle production. Oregon just needs to receive the finished product. Simpler, cheaper, more efficient. And for 17 years, it worked. Fuel flowed, prices stayed manageable, no major disruptions. But efficiency has a cost that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Every year without local production, Oregon became more dependent on that single pipeline. Every year, the margin for error got thinner. The system wasn't getting more efficient. It was getting more fragile. Then came September 2025, a 10-day outage on the Olympic pipeline. Prices in Oregon jumped 16 cents in 1 week, the biggest spike in the country. The state average hit $4.14, the highest since June 2024. People grumbled. Prices eventually dropped. Everyone forgot about it. 2 months later, it happened again. Same pipeline, different leak. This time near Everett, Washington. The shutdown lasted over a week, and this time the governor had to declare an emergency. 2 outages in 3 months on the same pipeline, the one Oregon depends on for 90% of its fuel. This isn't bad luck. This is what happens when you build a system with no redundancy. Now here's where the story gets worse. Oregon's vulnerability isn't just staying the same, it's expanding. Because the refineries Oregon depends on are under pressure too. California is losing refining capacity fast. Phillips 66 closed its Los Angeles refinery in late 2025. Valero is shutting down its Benicia facility near San Francisco in April 2026. Combined, that's 17.5% of California's refining capacity disappearing. California used to supply some fuel to the Pacific Northwest. Not anymore. Their refineries can't even meet California's own demand now. That means Oregon is now completely dependent on Washington. 5 refineries in Puget Sound, 1 pipeline running south, and Washington is heading down the same regulatory path that drove refineries out of California. Their Climate Commitment Act mirrors California's cap and trade. Their Clean Fuels program is adding costs. Market linkage with California is planned for 2026 or 2027. No Washington refineries are closing yet, but industry analysts warn that conversions or closures could happen by 2030 to 2045 as compliance costs rise and net zero mandates tighten.
If you've got a military, first responder, or government service background, you get exclusive discounts on eyewear brands like
Oregon is betting its entire fuel supply on refineries in a state that's actively making it harder to operate refineries. What happens when something goes wrong? Not a 2-week pipe leak. Something serious. The state has thought about this. The Oregon Department of Energy published a fuel action plan specifically addressing what happens in a catastrophic event. Their biggest concern? A Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. The science says it's coming. A magnitude 9 earthquake off the Pacific Northwest coast. When it hits, it won't just damage roads and buildings. It will devastate the entire petroleum supply and distribution system. The Washington refineries sit in a seismic zone. The Olympic pipeline runs through earthquake country. Portland's fuel hub, those 7 terminals that store and distribute almost everything, sits on soil that could liquefy in a major quake. The state's own assessment says restoring the fuel system after a major Cascadia event could take months or even years, months without fuel. In a state that has no local production, no reserves, no backup plan, emergency orders can redirect existing supply. They can waive trucking regulations, They can prioritize critical services, but you cannot redirect fuel that doesn't exist. You cannot emergency order a refinery into existence. So why doesn't Oregon just build a new refinery? Because they've made it nearly impossible. A modern oil refinery would cost billions of dollars. But money isn't even the main obstacle. It's time and regulation and political will. Environmental permitting alone would take years. Construction would take more years. Legal challenges from environmental groups would stretch the timeline further. One renewable diesel refinery has been trying to get built near Clatskanie for years. The project keeps hitting permit delays, lawsuits, and regulatory hurdles. And that's for renewable fuel, which is supposed to be the good kind. Imagine trying to build a conventional oil refinery in Oregon today. The permits, the lawsuits, the political opposition, the regulatory uncertainty. No rational investor would attempt it. The timeline is too long. The risks are too high. The political environment is too hostile. Oregon didn't explicitly ban refineries. They just created conditions where building one is functionally impossible. The result is the same permanent dependency, without anyone having to take responsibility for it. Let me show you what this costs real people. When the pipeline went down in November, prices didn't spike as badly as they could have because the governor's emergency order kept alternative supply flowing via barge and truck. But that alternative supply costs more. Barges are slower, trucks are limited. Every disruption adds cost that gets passed to consumers. And these disruptions are happening more often. 2 major outages in 2025 alone. The September outage, the November outage, each one driving prices up, each one reminding everyone how thin the margins really are. Industry forecasts for 2026 predict Oregon gas prices between $3.70 and $4.20 per gallon under normal conditions. If there's another disruption, another pipeline issue, another refinery problem in Washington, analysts warn prices could spike to $5, $6, even $8 in worst-case scenarios. For a family driving to work every day, that's hundreds of dollars a month in extra costs. For trucking companies moving goods across the state, it's the difference between profit and bankruptcy. For farmers who need diesel for tractors and irrigation, it's existential. Oregon's energy infrastructure is somewhat tenuous. That's not me saying it. That's Mike Freese with the Oregon Fuels Association. The person whose job is to keep fuel flowing in Oregon describing the system as tenuous. The politicians know this is a problem. In early 2025, Governor Kotek reached out to Chevron asking about supply assistance. She offered incentives. She acknowledged the vulnerabilities. Chevron's response was non-committal. Their CEO has publicly criticized what he calls unrealistic policies that deter investment in energy infrastructure. When the largest oil company in America won't commit to helping because they think your regulatory environment is hostile, that tells you something. Meanwhile, the 2026 legislative session just started. The governor's top priority, jobs and the economy. 75% of Oregon voters rate the state's economy as poor, but there's no serious discussion of energy independence, no proposals to add refining capacity, no plan to reduce dependency on that single pipeline. They're debating how to close a $297 million hole in the transportation budget. They're arguing about when to hold a tax referendum. They're fighting the same fights they've been fighting for years. The fuel vulnerability sits there, unaddressed, waiting for the next disruption. Here's what Oregon teaches us. In December 2008, they let their last refinery close. For 17 years, the system seemed to work fine. Fuel flowed, prices were manageable, nobody panicked. Then a pipe leaked. And suddenly the governor was declaring emergencies. Airlines were adding fuel stops. Gas stations were limiting purchases. And everyone got a brief glimpse of what Oregon had quietly become. A state completely dependent on infrastructure it doesn't control, in a place it doesn't govern, operated by companies it can't compel to help. The November crisis was contained in 15 days. The pipeline got fixed. Everyone went back to normal. But normal is the problem. Normal is 0 refineries. Normal is 90% of fuel flowing through one pipe. Normal is complete dependency on Washington refineries that face their own regulatory pressures. Normal is a fuel system that state officials themselves describe as tenuous. The next crisis might not be a small leak fixed in 2 weeks. It might be a major earthquake. It might be a refinery closure in Washington. It might be a longer outage on infrastructure that's already failed twice in 3 months. And when that happens, emergency orders won't be enough. You can't order fuel into existence. You can't emergency declare a refinery. Oregon let their only option disappear in 2008. They've spent 17 years making it impossible to build a new one. And now they're one bad day away from a crisis no governor can fix. If this video helped you understand something most people don't think about, share it with someone who needs to see it. Hit subscribe.
Yep, another good one from her. News out of Oregon she did. I got some short clips to play. I'm going to finish off with Nick just came out with about 15, 20-minute one, so I'll say that one for last. Kay's listening today. Here. Wow. I gotta log in on this one, darn it. Okay, finally go. How about this one here? 2 minutes.
And every single household in America was watching a black and white television set. Then somebody explained to me how that flag ended up in full color on every textbook, every poster, every news channel in the world. Where did the color come from? And here's what makes it weirder. Astronauts floating around in the vacuum of space, but that same flag is rippling, waving, like there's wind, in a place where wind literally cannot exist. Now hold on. Before you scroll, ask yourself this. Why does a country that had trouble launching a weather balloon suddenly crack interstellar travel in under a decade? Something about that timeline doesn't sit right. See, most people hear moon landing and they picture Neil Armstrong stepping onto gray, dusty ground. But nobody stops to ask the small questions, the ones hiding right in plain sight. Television technology in 1969 was barely keeping up with live football games. Cameras at that time could barely capture a clear image in a lit studio, let alone 238,000 miles away on a dead rock with no atmosphere.
Yeah, thanks.
Yet somehow the footage came back crisp, sharp, almost cinematic. And get this, NASA admitted they lost the original raw footage. Gone, the highest achievement in human history, and they just misplaced it like a grocery list. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Stanley Kubrick, one of Hollywood's greatest directors, filmed 2001: A Space Odyssey, just 1 year before the moon landing. A movie so realistic that people genuinely debated whether it was real. Some researchers have spent years connecting those dots. Think about the lighting in the moon landing footage. Shadows going in completely different directions on what should be a single light source, the sun. Professional photographers saw that footage and said that kind of shadow pattern only happens in a studio with multiple lights. You were never supposed to notice that. All right, so let's take a look at things today, yeah? It's a bit odd how some stories just get repeated over and over without anyone really digging into the details. Makes you wonder if we're actually getting the full picture.
Yep.
Or just what we're supposed to see. The goal isn't to tell you what to believe. No, that's not it at all. The goal is to get you asking questions that the mainstream narrative never bothered to answer. When you start pulling at small loose threads, the color footage, the waving flag, the missing tapes, the whole story starts looking less like history and more like a very well-funded production. Countries that tried to reach the moon after 1969 with modern rockets, modern computers, modern cameras, have failed multiple times. India's mission crash-landed. Russia's program collapsed. China is still trying. Yet in 1969, with computers less powerful than your pocket calculator, they did it flawlessly. First try, perfect landing, safe return, broadcast worldwide. The Wright brothers took years of failed attempts before flying 12 seconds, but somehow the moon shot worked out perfectly, start to finish, first time. Every single element. With 1960s technology, you were never taught to question that. So yeah, just think about it for a moment. Everything lined up first go back in the 60s makes you wonder, doesn't it? If this video made you stop and think even for just a second.
How was that one, you guys? Under 5 minutes on this one.
Up by 60 centimeters.
For years, satellites and radar planes have watched Antarctica like a security camera on the coldest place on Earth. Most days, nothing dramatic happens. The ice creeps, snow builds up, cliffs break away now and then. Then, buried deep in the data from one glacier, something changed. Where solid ice was supposed to be, a massive hollow structure appeared, tall as a skyscraper and wide enough to swallow a city neighborhood. And whatever is moving inside it has scientists genuinely worried. The giant hole under Antarctica's Doomsday Glacier. On a cold day in early 2019, a group of scientists sat in front of a screen at a research center in California and watched their maps of Antarctica update. For years, they had been flying over the same stretch of ice in West Antarctica, collecting data from planes and satellites, stacking one year on top of the next like pages in a flipbook. They were used to seeing slow change. Ice does not often move in a way that shocks people who study it for a living. This time, though, the picture on the screen showed something that did not fit what anyone expected. They were looking at Thwaites Glacier, a huge river of ice in West Antarctica that flows into Pine Island Bay on the edge of the Amundsen Sea. Thwaites is one of the widest glaciers on the planet, with an ice front that stretches for more than 70 miles. In many places, the ice from bedrock to surface is well over 2,000 feet thick. It already sheds so much ice into the ocean that it is a major source of today's sea level rise. And if it were to collapse completely, it could eventually raise sea level by around 2 feet. Because of that risk, many people now know it by a dramatic nickname, the Doomsday Glacier. By then, Thwaites was already the focus of a large joint effort between scientists from the United States and the United Kingdom. For almost a decade, planes from NASA's Operation Ice Bridge program had flown back and forth across the region with ice-penetrating radar and laser instruments on board. At the same time, satellites in orbit watched from above, recording how the surface rose and fell and how the ice front and the line where the glacier lifts off the bedrock were moving. Earlier work had shown that this line, called the grounding line, had been retreating inland for decades. That alone was worrying, because it meant the ice was slowly losing its grip on the seafloor. The team expected to see narrow gaps at the base where seawater could creep in under the ice. Instead, when they combined many years of flight lines and satellite tracks into a single three-dimensional picture, they saw something much bigger, a huge hollow opening up at the bottom of the glacier, in a place where they had expected only a thin sheet of water. In that combined picture, the hollow sat like a blunt wound at the base of the glacier. It was tucked near the grounding line, between the underside of the ice and the rock below. Instead of solid ice pressed against the bed, there was now a space almost 1,000 feet high and stretching for several miles. When the scientists worked out how wide it was, they found that its footprint covered about 2/3 of the area of Manhattan. When they then used the change in surface height and the radar echoes to estimate how much ice had gone missing, they arrived at an amount of roughly 14 billion tons, most of it lost over only about 3 years. That's the kind of mass you'd expect to notice if it broke off as one giant iceberg. Instead, it simply melted away out of sight. For people who work on glaciers, that result felt like looking at an X-ray of a bone and finding a large hollow where the solid part should be. Some space between ice and rock was expected. What nobody had counted on was a hole that big, that deep, and that young. The size of the cavity showed that the glacier had been melting from below at a rate that did not match the slow, even loss built into many older computer models. The fact that most of the hollow had formed in just a few years meant the change was not some distant past event. It was a live process that was still happening. At the depth where the base of Thwaites sits, That much melt over only a few years points to a powerful new supply of heat and water at the ice base. That raised an obvious question. How could so much ice disappear from a place that never...
If this glacier...
Okay, who do we got here? We got Tune Monday. Welcome. This is your first time in chat. Let's be respectful. Thank you. And here's another one I got. Antarctica Flying Eagle. This one's about 4 minutes.
So picture this, we've got two ends of the Earth, right? On the globe model, the Arctic is up top and Antarctica is down at the bottom. Both get about the same sunlight, both are covered in ice, both are supposed to be extreme. But in reality, the North Pole is warmer, it has seasons of melting ice. It even has wildlife and plants surviving there. Meanwhile, Antarctica, it's a giant desert of ice. No trees, no villages, no cozy little animals. Just endless ice walls, freezing winds, and temperatures so brutal that humans can't even live there permanently. Doesn't that already sound suspicious? Now here's where it gets interesting. On the flat Earth model, Antarctica isn't a little continent at the bottom. It's actually a massive ice ring that surrounds the entire world. That changes everything. If Antarctica is the edge barrier, it means it's constantly shielded from direct sunlight. Unlike the North Pole, which gets the sun circling overhead throughout the year, the Antarctic ring sits on the farthest reaches, always catching the weakest angle of the sun's light. That would explain why it's colder, why it's harsher, and why it feels like a frozen prison nobody can escape. And think about this, why do we hear about expeditions to the North Pole, but never about freely exploring Antarctica? Why are there international treaties signed by dozens of countries making sure regular people can't just go there on their own? If it's just a frozen wasteland, what's there to hide? Maybe it's because if anyone could explore it fully, they'd realize it's not just a continent. It's the very edge of our world. Here's another thought. On the globe model, the sun is supposed to be 93 million miles away, blasting the Earth evenly. But if that were true, how could the North Pole be warmer than the South when they're basically the same thing? Shouldn't both poles be equally frozen? Unless, of course, the sun is much closer, much smaller, and moving in circles above us, like a spotlight. In that case, areas closer to the center, like the Arctic, get more direct exposure. Areas farther out, like Antarctica, are lit from a distance, which keeps them colder. Suddenly, everything starts making sense.
So 1 o'clock.
And one more thing, why do we see videos of penguins in Antarctica, but not thriving human settlements? Yet, in the Arctic, we've got people living there, building communities, raising families. If both poles are supposedly the same, why is one livable and the other forbidden? Could it be because one is just ice floating in the ocean while the other is a massive wall encircling us, keeping everything in? So the next time someone says, if the Earth is flat, why is Antarctica colder than the North Pole? Flip the question back on them. Ask, if Earth is a globe, why isn't it equal? The truth is, the flat Earth model doesn't just explain it better, it also raises the kind of questions the mainstream never wants us asking. If this video got you thinking, don't stop here. There's way more they're not telling you. Check out the next video on this page, because once you see how deep this rabbit hole goes, there's no going back. If the Earth is...
So those are two good ones from Antarctica News there. I got a few more short ones, and then I'm going to finish off with Nick 20-minute one. Oh, I can't play that one, dang it. Oh, shoot. Okay. God dang it. Hold on.
every ocean, and every rooftop on this planet. Why are construction crews still drilling holes in the ground to build brand new cell towers in 2026? And here's the part nobody talks about. Why do your calls drop inside a tunnel that's only 50 feet underground, but NASA claims a signal travels 300,000 miles through empty space just fine? Wait, if the signal from a satellite can pierce through the entire atmosphere and land perfectly on a tiny phone in your pocket, why can't it go through one concrete wall in your house? So here's what we're actually told. Satellites orbit far above us. They beam signals down. Your phone catches those signals. Simple, right? But then ask your carrier why your GPS just freezes up when you walk into a parking garage. And honestly, ask them why rural towns are still called dead zones, even though satellites are supposed to cover the whole globe. Oh, and ask them why billions of dollars are, still being spent building physical towers on actual ground. Engineers will tell you it all comes down to something called signal strength and frequency. Higher frequency signals, yeah, they carry more data, but they just can't travel as far or punch through solid objects. So, satellites might handle GPS and some data, but voice calls and fast internet, that still needs towers close to where you are. But let's just sit with that for a second. We're talking about technology that supposedly bounced a live television signal off the moon back in 1969. We're talking about probes, sending photos all the way back from billions of miles away. And yet, a 4G signal can't make it from a tower just 2 miles away into your kitchen. Workers are out there, laying fiber cables under the streets. Utility crews are bolting new antennas onto buildings every single week. Mobile companies have spent over $2 trillion, yeah, $2 trillion, on ground infrastructure worldwide since 2010. $2 trillion, all on the ground, while satellites, they just orbit above. Either the technology up there isn't actually doing what we think it's doing, or maybe, just maybe, the folks selling you your phone plan know something about the limits of that technology that they'd rather not plaster on a billboard. We've got more videos just like this breaking down the things you think you know, but actually don't. Go ahead, tap the page.
That was good on the cell towers. Oh.
With FBI, that's the story we're being told. The sheriff's office is not allowing the FBI to take evidence to their labs to test for forensics. The sheriff's office wants the whatever they've collected to be tested in the same lab that all of the other stuff has been tested in, and it's a third-party lab that they trust. What this tells me is that the sheriff's office doesn't trust the FBI, or someone doesn't trust them. Maybe Savannah told them not to trust the FBI. Because don't you think it's a little fucking weird that the FBI got involved in this case the day after, when they only get involved in missing persons cases if it's across state lines, which that hadn't been determined yet, and if it's a person under 18, which Nancy definitely was not. So I always found it weird that the FBI got involved so quickly, and such high-powered people. Kosh Patel saying he's going to go down there, bro, to do what? Annoy people? Get the fuck out of here, you troll. Never smelled right. Then I showed you guys the Google Trends search that I did, where we saw someone from the blue and white country, or a few people, we don't know, 11 times Googling Nancy Guthrie a month before she went missing, and then one time in Mexico a week before she went missing. 0 times in the United States, all right? Savannah Guthrie is in the e-files because she interviewed a bunch of the victims. Her husband works for a lobbying firm and was very close, worked in the White House with Clinton and Gore. And it was during that time that E and Colleen used to go to the White House all the time. So now the sheriff's office saying that they want this to go to a third party tells me that they don't trust the FBI because, I don't know, look at Charlie Kirk. Look at Charlie Kirk. Something doesn't smell right. What do you guys think? Stay tuned.
Something definitely don't smell right. One more with her.
Failure if they do not pivot or change what they're doing very soon, in my opinion. I spent my career at CIA and NSA. I also advised other intelligence agencies. I now have my own corporate intelligence firm. All these opinions are my own. This analysis is my own. For entertainment purposes only, you get the point. Clients like venture capitalists, law firms doing mergers and acquisitions will hire me to assess CEO leadership and culture risk of companies that they're going to invest in or merge, acquire, etc. And I look at the things that due diligence misses. So you can make numbers do very creative things, which is why 70% of investments that fail are because of CEOs and leadership. It's a very, very high number because it's very hard to catch in due diligence, and most people don't because it's a very special skill set to figure that out. So anyway, wanted to do this high-level assessment for Turning Point USA, and I'm going to start with its CEO, Erica Kirk. So let's go. Erica Kirk was appointed CEO as a successor CEO, relationship CEO, basically. She was the wife of the founder. And the messaging has been, he wanted it, we're going to keep this in the family. Typically, that's going to be for, like, they didn't want to lose donors. They wanted to keep the continuity similar. However, as I watched interviews and her be the talking head for it, and she's, in my opinion, doing a very, very, very poor job at it. In fact, I think she's setting it up for more risk. Part of me wonders if these donors or the board who unanimously voted her in are like, shit, what do we do? And the reason that I say that she's bringing more risk for TPUSA is because when she's doing all of these interviews, if you think about who they target, which are high schools, colleges, like that was the audience that was targeted through these conversations that Charlie Kirk had. And when Turning Point USA is at a high risk for failure if they do not pivot or change.
Hey, we're up to date with her. I got two more. Oh. Yeah, I don't understand that one. Thanks, Fine Eagle. Got two more, and then we'll finish off with Nick.
Wasn't just a blunder. It was more of a threat. Do I have that right? Yeah, that's what people are saying now, is that she wasn't talking about the Dow being at 50,000 points. Like, that was like why we should overlook everything that's going on the Epstein files. No. That was a warning, a clear warning that if we continue to ask for these files, then the billionaires, the elites, the whatever, who are in charge of basically our entire economy are going to crash it. Do I have that right? So our economy is based upon however many elites not pulling their money out of a rigged stock market. Do I have that right? And so they know that the middle class has zero shot at ever getting out of this thing called work, aka slavery, unless we go into the market with our 401ks and basically just hope to God that they don't pull it out. Do I have that right? Wait a minute. So
she had a lot of views on that one, already on TikTok. So one more and finish off with Nick's 20 and back at 6. KK's listening. This one's a good one too. She has 10,000.
This down to your IQ level, because you got a big old cranium, but ain't nothing up in there. All right, first and foremost, the ones that are out here squawking, Nick Shirley showed up after business hours. They were closed. Okay, then invite him back during normal business hours when the doors are open. Let those cameras roll. But you won't, will you? No, you won't, because transparency would absolutely wreck your narrative, and you know it. Now let's talk about the absolutely unhinged accusations y'all are throwing out about this kid. Calling this kid a pedo. Let me ask you this question, okay? If somebody was going to go be a kitty diddler, okay, who in their right mind would record it, narrate it, edit it, and then post it on every platform known to man for everybody in the world to see? Anyways, let's move on to the next thing. Y'all's favorite buzzword, racist. Who are the ones that are always using a certain color of people to make their bank accounts fatter? And lastly, you can dry those tears up anytime now. You can stop playing the victim. Okay? Stop being out here going, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they're all mad at us. I don't know. Maybe because we get online every day and we see your big-headed domes on our screens bragging about living off of our taxpayer dollars. You know the one I'm talking about. The one that gets on here and tells the white man and the white woman to get up and go make his money. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all don't get to get out here and act like you're oppressed and then turn around and act like you're untouchable. Y'all don't get to sit out here and cry about racism while you cashing them checks. So miss me with your moral lectures. Miss me with your fake outrage. It's time for y'all's blood-sucking, leeching hind ends to get the hell out of our damn country.
Well said.
All right,
well
listen
said.
here, you short bus riders. I'm going to...
She had a big view on that video, you guys. Okay, last one, 20 minutes, I think. $15 minutes.
For the Democrats' apparent frontrunner, he's polling ahead of everybody else. And the poly market odds are showing that Gavin Newsom is the most likely candidate to be the Democrats' frontrunner in 2028. So what's going on here? We have Obama coming out of the woodwork and throwing him under the bus. And we also have Hillary Clinton in the same 24-hour span condemning the policies which Gavin Newsom supports. The rhetoric coming from Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in a 24-hour span is no coincidence, and it smells very much like they got new marching orders. And while it does feel like the end of Gavin Newsom's career, and there's a very good chance they'll pivot to somebody else, I actually think there's something much more sinister going on, and that this is all a bait and switch. And the reason I say that is because we already have the playbook in the state of Virginia. So we're going to dive straight into this, but first we got to talk about something very serious. I got to show you something that you're not going to be able to unsee, and this is very serious. Ladies and gentlemen, I logged into my Twitter account, and I saw in my comments section, a caricature artist has created this image of myself, and now my family is bullying me, okay? My brother-in-law has made this his Facebook profile picture, and this is circulating amongst my friends and family right now. And this is a very serious situation, and I need your support. So if you could, please smash the like button and let me know down in the comment section that that is not what I look like, because if it is, we are going to go from a YouTube channel to a radio show, because I will never show my face again. I need the validation that this is not actually what I look like. Please tell me in the comments section, reassure me that I am not this hideous. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the serious news. So take a look at this. We have the Democrats' golden child going on Brian Tyler Cohen's show and basically condemning Gavin Newsom and saying that his policies are failing, okay, and that people do not support what's going on in LA. And he's not being subtle about it. He names LA County, which is controlled by Gavin Newsom, and says that the policies there, specifically on homelessness, are failing and that Americans don't support it.
The same would be true, let's say, here in Los Angeles around the homeless issue. I think morally, ethically speaking, it is an atrocity that in a country this wealthy, we have people just on the streets. And we should have we should insist on policies that recognize their full humanity, people who are houseless, and be able to provide them the help and resources that they need. But we should also recognize that the average person, doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown, and that we're not going to be able to build a working majority and support for the resources that we need to help folks like that, whether it's drug treatment or temporary housing or what have you. We're not going to be able to generate support for it if we simply say, you know what, it's not their fault, and so they should be able to do whatever they want, because that's a losing political strategy.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Obama, there's a reason why he's the Democrats' darling, because he understands, the sob stories only go so far. At the end of the day, it's all about political capital, and we are losing on this issue because guess what? The homeless people, yeah, sure, we harvest some ballots from them, but they don't make up the overwhelming vast majority of the American voter. And the actual American voter does not want to have to navigate around homeless camps and make sure they're not stepping in any homeless turds in LA, California. And I want to dive deeper into what he's actually saying here because it's very indicative of what the Democrats are planning to do as a political strategy for 2028. But first, I got to show you this, obviously. This is what he's talking about here. This is your average day on your way to the grocery store. This is what you see in California under Gavin Newsom. You have this fine gentleman here washing his hind end with a fire hydrant after he just took a dump on the side of the street. And this is what's going to be memed into oblivion if Gavin Newsom tries to take up the sword and become America's next president. People are going to be showing this to the American voter and saying, do you want this nationwide? Is this what you want coming to your state? Coming to a state near you. You've got homeless men washing their heinies with fire hydrants after they took a dump on the sidewalk if Gavin Newsom becomes president. And Obama is pointing out the fact that, who are we pandering to here? Why are we pandering to homeless people? Because they're not the ones that get presidents elected. So Obama is basically saying, listen, I understand it's all a big grift. You made your money when you were the governor of the state. But if you're going to try to do this, if you're going to try to go for the gold and become the president, all right, now we need to actually focus on what the average American thinks about when they go to the polls. Now, we're going to get deeper into this because there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's something much more sinister going on, and I smell some treachery afoot. But I want to show you this as well because, again, in a 24-hour span, we had both Obama and Hillary Clinton coming out and basically eviscerating the policies of Gavin Newsom in the radical wing of the Democrat Party. And this is a very interesting thing here. We have Hillary Clinton. I'll show you this clip, and then I've got another one. This is a clip of Hillary Clinton bragging about the number of deportations that occurred under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. So she's coming out against open border policies and mass migration.
More people were deported under my husband and Barack Obama without killing American citizens and without putting children into detention camps than were in the first.
Stop right there. The cages were built by Barack Obama, but of course she's going to say Trump is putting kids in cages. Now here's the real clip where she's talking about how mass migration has gone too far.
I think we need to call it for what it is. There is a legitimate reason to have a debate about things like migration. It went too far. It's been disruptive and destabilizing, and it needs to be fixed in a humane way with secure borders that don't torture and kill people.
Now, believe it or not, when you strip away the
So I got a thing, everybody. When are we gonna see the end of Hillary? Seems like she's never gonna go away.
Condemnation rhetoric about killing people and kids in cages and all that BS. Hillary Clinton just made a bombshell admission about her own party that Joe Biden's border policies, the open border policies, the mass migration, it is absolutely catastrophic. It's destabilizing. These are very choice words that she's used. And I want you guys to read between the lines here and see what's really going on because it's very sinister. And I can see right through it. And so I want to lay that out for you. Basically, you have Obama and Hillary admitting defeat. They're admitting defeat and they're pivoting hard. Now, if you can't see that, let me explain. So Hillary Clinton and Obama basically just gave the same message on two separate issues. You have Hillary admitting defeat on immigration and open border policy, and you have Obama admitting defeat on the mass welfare state and funneling billions of dollars. He understands full well that Americans have woken up with everything going on in Minnesota and all the discovered fraud in California with the Medicaid fraud, the California fires fraud, the high-speed rail fraud, all that stuff's going to be coming out when Gavin Newsom decides to run in 2028. And so they understand Americans have awakened to the Democrats' tactics on, waste, fraud, and abuse. He chose homelessness as an example to highlight and say, while I understand we need to help these people, we're not going to win because the average American doesn't want to see homeless camps and they don't want to see turds on the sidewalks. Then you have Hillary Clinton over here talking about how mass migration has caused a destabilization. It's gone too far. And if you don't think this is an admission of defeat, let's go back and see if Hillary Clinton, during the 4 years that Joe Biden was in office, if she ever condemned Joe Biden's border policy while he was in office. I guarantee you she never did. But now she's saying it's gone too far. And so what Obama and Hillary are both saying simultaneously, we saw Americans elected Donald Trump. He won the popular vote running on mass deportations and securing the border and fixing waste, fraud, and abuse. All this stuff, right? He won the popular vote on these issues. And we've tried to change the cultural perception. We've tried to hit him with propaganda. We've tried to take the shooting of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and we've tried to call ICE agents Nazis, masked men, all this stuff. We've tried as hard as we could with the propaganda to change public's perception to get them to support amnesty for all illegals and being soft on crime and continuing the grift of waste, fraud, and abuse, but it's not actually working. We are losing because no matter how much propaganda we put out there, the Americans still support a secure border, and they still want to see these 10, 20, 30 million illegals that came in under the previous administrations deported. And so if we're going to win in 2028, then we need to pivot hard and take a different approach. And if Gavin Newsom's not going to get on board, we need to toss him to the wolves and prop up somebody else. Because here's what's going on. The Americans overwhelmingly support these policies of a closed border, secure border, mass deportations. And so we have to pander to them. We have to speak their language. But what we're going to do is this. We're going to start telling the Americans that we're going to give them the things that they elected Trump to do, but we're going to give them to you better, right? So we're going to secure the border without putting kids in cages. We are going to deport people without making anybody sad. And we're going to do it safely and effectively, unlike Donald Trump, who's just a wild man, a dictator who does it through brute force. We're going to do it better, right? So we're going to give you these things, but we're going to give them to you better. That's their new approach. Rather than try to convince you that we should give mass amnesty to all illegals and have an open border, we are going to give you the things Donald Trump promised to give you, but without anybody being sad. But obviously, they're not going to deliver on any of that. See, because you can't actually have both. You can't clean up waste, fraud, and abuse in Minnesota without disproportionately targeting Somalians because they're the ones that are committing the crime. You can't deport 10, 20 million illegal immigrants without making somebody cry. You can't, have a strong border without detaining children and temporarily putting them in cages. You can't do these things. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And they know that. So it's all a Trojan horse. They're going to say out of their mouths, these are the things that we support to get elected, but it's a Trojan horse. It's a bait and switch. We are going to say out of our mouths that we support these things when we really don't, to run as more moderates and pander to the average everyday working American, and create like a Trojan horse. And then once we get in there, we're going to tear the whole thing down. And if you don't believe me, then just look at what happened in Virginia. Abigail Spanberger ran as a moderate for Virginia's governor and then did exactly that. So this guy, he's got it. Okay, Andrew Colvett on X said exactly what I was thinking. He's got it. Okay, he said Hillary Clinton all of a sudden telling Europeans that mass migration has gone too far. Barack Obama, all of a sudden, roasting Gavin Newsom in homeless tent cities. Dem leaders are sending a signal to moderate the message so they can go full Virginia if they win in 2028. That's exactly it. And if you don't know what went down in Virginia, I'm telling you guys, that's exactly what happened. And Cernovich said this as well. He said, Virginia is the Democrats' model for 2028. Run on a moderate message, get elected, then go to town by enacting every far left-wing wish list item. And that's what happened on day one when the Democrats truly took power in Virginia. The new Democrat-controlled House, they started throwing bills out the wazoo that support these radical left policies. They raise their taxes, they're taking your guns, late-term abortions, banning hand counts in elections, and much, much more. And that's exactly the playbook that Obama and Hillary are laying out for 2028. So what I see happening here is the Democrats, the power players, they're getting their marching orders. They see the writing on the wall. They know that Gavin Newsom's policies would never work on a national scale without massive voter fraud, and they're not confident that they can pull it off. So they are going to most likely pivot from Gavin Newsom to somebody else. I wouldn't be surprised to see some shadowy figure emerge up, from the ashes and become the new Democratic frontrunner. And it might be somebody you've never heard of, because when I look at the playing field and I see who do they really got? They got Kamala Harris? No, that ain't happening. They've got AOC? That ain't happening. They've got Josh Shapiro. I could see them running a Josh Shapiro. But other than that, I mean, who else do they got? So they might try to take Gavin Newsom and shape him and mold him and try to get him to appear like he's a moderate. I don't know. But I'm telling you, this is very indicative that they are seeing the writing on the wall. They know they cannot win running on these radical left crazy policies. And so they're going to try to portray themselves like as MAGA almost, but better, safer, more effective, less tears. It's going to be what you want, but 10 times better. And then get in there and destroy the whole thing from the inside out like they always do. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what I wanted to share with you today. Be sure to like the video and subscribe. Turn the bell notification.
Okay, that was the first Nick video. That's going to wrap it up for now. We'll come back at 6 o'clock, you guys. So, God bless everybody. Love all. Remember, please hit the like. Make sure everybody goes to the description box and sign into the backup channels. Thanks. Stay safe, stay strong. Keep the faith. Never give up. And KK was listening. Hopefully she'll be back in tonight. Yeah, Carol must have been busy. Lucy, Tim, and Lion Eagle. So, signing off for now. Another good show for tonight. And signing off, Chico and Dude for now. See you soon.